Hi, welcome to the International Institute of Genealogical Studies. This is our special speaker, part of our student lounge series. And our special speaker today is Tina LaFreniere, and she is from Related Faces. Tina, thank you for being with us. And I'm going to let you take it away, and we'll come back after you're done with a Q&A for our students.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me. It's always fun to meet with you all and get to have a little bit of lively discussion at the end. So now let me go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. And there we go. Okay, so when I'm presenting, I can't see anybody. So let's hold all of our questions, if you don't mind, until the end. And then I'm happy to answer anything that you've got. And again, thank you very much for having me. And today's class is called, Is That Grandma Mathilde or Aunt Louisa or Aunt Lillian or Aunt Grace? And we're going to take on the frustrations of trying to figure out who are the people in your old inherited photos because your family didn't write on the back, right? Even if you know which family your photos belong to, it can be overwhelming trying to figure out who is who. This class will cover new information not covered in my previous class, such as digitizing old photos, facial recognition, and methods for identifying people. We will, however, review a few things that are important to these topics. It is important to note that I assume that you all are following copyright laws, and any photos you're using or your clients use that you do have permission or you do have the rights to use those photos. And so if you don't know if you have the rights, I recommend checking out the IIGS classes on copyright laws. To utilize facial recognition in solving your photo mysteries, you're going to need to digitize your or your client's old family photos. I have hundreds to digitize, so I looked into various ways to do it. And there are some fantastic photo managers and digitizing services out there. But with the number of photos I had to digitize, I found it was too expensive. So I decided to use my desktop document scanner. My advice to you is don't make the same mistake I did. I'm not referring to photo-specific scanners. I'm talking about those desktop scanners for documents with the bright lights, usually found incorporated with printers. If you look at the first three photos, you'll see the results of using document scanners. The two duplicate photos are actually the same photo of my great-grandfather. The one on the top left was document scanned in the summer of 2018. The one on the right is the same photo redigitized in May of 2022. The intense light of the scanner has activated the paper and caused the 125-year-old photo to fade. After researching, I learned that some photos taken between 1880 and 1920 contain elements which, when exposed to strong light, can cause the photos to fade. The wedding photo is one my cousin scanned on her document scanner. Document scanners digitize in dots per inch. Facial recognition sees the images as a series of dots. So many times the faces from these photos are not even recognized by facial mapping. As you can see, I needed a better solution, and my daughter suggested the perfect one, the digital camera on my cell phone. I now digitize all of my photos with my smartphone by simply taking a picture of my picture, and the results are perfect for Related Faces technology. Here are a few tips to help you digitize with your cell phone. Prop your photo upright and have your light source from the side rather than above. It helps reduce shadow and glare. I also switch out different fabrics behind the photos to help bring out contrast, which is important for facial recognition. Also, use the zoom on your camera to get close in on the faces. You may want to have two digitized versions of your photos, one with the whole photo, and one that just contains the faces. I'm often asked how facial recognition works. Well, regardless of the recognition platform, the concept for the technology is the same. Computer algorithms are trained to map faces by looking for points of contrast on a face, indicating the location and shape of features such as eyes, noses, and mouths. The mapping points are placed where changes in color and tone are located. Then measurements are done between the points. The more points the application is able to identify, the more measurements it can make, the increase the accuracy of the results. The image on the left is a good illustration of how this works. Notice how many more points are being searched for around the eyes and eyebrows. For most people, their eyes will experience the least amount of change across their life. The graphic in the orange box shows a photo of Sylvester Stallone that has gone through facial recognition mapping. Look at the concentration of points around the eyes, nose, and mouths. The image sharpness is not perfect, but you can clearly see the shape of these features. The last graphic depicts facial mapping when a person's face is in profile. Obviously, the less of the face that is visible, the fewer points and measurements we can use for identification. After the face is mapped, these programs look for faces with the same or similar readings. So what happens when an image is poor quality? Like faces in profile, image quality affects the number of points we're able to map on the face. This is Delma Booman. What I'd like you to notice is the quality difference between these two photos. Just looking at the two photos on the left, you might think they're both of equal quality. But when I zoomed in on the faces, it becomes very evident they're not. The top photo, my cousin digitized on her desktop scanner with a high quality 600 DPI. The bottom photo was digitized with my cell phone, which has a resolution of 12.6 million pixels, which is infinitely better for facial recognition. The ability for facial recognition to correctly map the face on the right is far superior to the face on the left. So go home and digitize, do this easy check with your digitized photo. Just zoom in on them because you may find that you need to digitize them again. Now let's talk about your big box of photos. First, set aside the photos where you do know who the people in the photos are, or you know who some of the people in the photos are. In my case, it's the large family photos where everyone is known. These are the target people you're looking for in your other photos. We've discovered that the majority of unknown people in photos are actually known people, but just weren't recognized. For me, I have a lot of unlabeled photos of women who I was sure were my great-grandmother Mathilde and her sisters Lillian, Louisa, and Grace. But they look so much alike, it was nearly impossible to discern the difference between them. And more on this in a little bit. We have a date range for your photo, or having a date range for your photo really can assist you in identifying the inhabitants. Here's a really fast hack, a way of grouping your photos by date range. Just flip your photos over and sort them by paper type. Make stacks by those types. For instance, a stack for those thick cardboard photos, the ones that are embossed versus the ones that are not embossed. The thin waxy paper, sometimes they're glued to cardboard. The postcard back papers, and then the decorative edges papers, and the tin types, and the modern Polaroids, and so on. This method usually ends up doing a great job of sorting your photos into periods of 10 to 20 years, which can actually help you define a generation. After you have your piles of photos that are similar, you can then flip them over and really start dating them. Dating the paper of your photo alone can help you identify the people in your photo. Here are some sites I found useful. The Northeast Document Conservation Center is where I discovered I have those light-sensitive papers. I wish I'd gone there before I had scanned those photos that I ruined. Like you, I'm always trying to educate myself on photos, and I took a class given by Becky Adamson, a research specialist at Family Search. If you get a chance to attend one of her classes on techniques for identifying people in photos, I highly recommend it. Her class is loaded with a lot of information, and I was surprised to learn while I was sitting in her class that she uses Related Faces to help her solve her photo mysteries. So I've included in the handout some of these sites and some of the sites that Becky also recommends. During my previous class for you all, I went through how to use Related Faces website. So I'm going to refer you to that recording for more information. Today, I'm just going to touch on the key elements. You can load photos from your computer or your mobile device. The only required data for a photo is to name it, which is never shared with others. For the people in your photo, you must either give them a name, or if you're unsure of who they are, you give them a general descriptor. Names are shared, general descriptors are not. They're private, as is living people's data. We also give you the ability to organize your photos and people profiles into color-coded boxes and albums, and you can filter your pairings to look at ones from only your own photo collection, or just the pairings made with other users' photos, or pairings that were made with photos from the Library of Congress. A couple of things that make Related Faces different from facial recognition on your phone or on Google or Lightroom is that your ability to create the profiles for all of your people, whether they're known or unknown to you, and most of all, our resemblance numbers. Resemblance numbers give you the ability to quantify the similarities and differences in pairings your people make to determine whether a paired face is or is not the person in your photo. Other facial recognition tools show you how your faces with a very high resemblance, which is a very narrow similarity range. And they don't give you a metric for comparing one set of paired faces to another. Related Faces resemblance numbers are not only the quantified similarity between the two faces, but also takes into account any data provided about the two photos and the people who were paired. When we find commonalities between the data, we push the resemblance number up. When the data is different, we lower it. As you can see with my foreman women, they look so much alike, and they make pairings with each other at a very high level, as shown by the pairings in the circles in orange. When you have sisters like great-grandma Mathilde and her sisters Lillian, Louisa, and Grace, who have facial features of 90% the same or greater, other platforms could show you the two of the sisters as the same person, but they're not. And how would you know they were different or incorrectly identified without a metric to measure them? Also, because the other programs only show you pairings with very high levels of similarity, they miss pairings that show you generational relationships, such as mothers and daughters, as shown by the teal circles. Or they may not show you pairings for a person at a different stage in your lives, as shown by the blue circles. In my previous class, I demonstrated how to use a comparison grid to help you with identifications, especially when you have family groups where many people look similar. I want to quickly go over it again and additionally show you how I use resemblance numbers to double check the results. Resemblance numbers quantify those subtle differences, remember, in the faces. The grid on the left of the blue vertical bar maps out the resemblance numbers where I compared my photos where the Foreman sisters are identified against the ones where they are not. On the left side, I position the sisters from photos where they have been previously identified. Across the top are the photos where the sisters are not named. The pairings in the upper left show you how I position the resemblance numbers in the grid. As you can see, that first row of Matilda made a substantial pairing with every sister in the first of my unknown photos. But when I analyzed the resemblance numbers, it became clear that the first sister in the photo of all three is Matilda. The middle is Lillian, and the sister on the right is Louisa. Without the resemblance numbers, I would not have been able to discern who was who. The green blocks show you where the resemblance numbers helped me identify each sister in the remaining photos, with one exception, the sister at the bottom, Grace, and I'll explain Grace in just a minute. Now, please look at the three photos boxed in teal. They turned out to be confirmation photos of all four sisters. Related Faces is an amazing tool. When I combined a little genealogical investigation with the resemblance numbers, it gave me which sister was which. The McCool Lutheran Church record gave me the date for all of the sisters' confirmations. Related Faces indicated that girls F and G were Matilda and Louisa. And when I looked at the church records, I found that the two girls were in the same confirmation class, so they're together. Girl D and E look so much alike that I originally thought they were both Lillian, but the clothing styles between the two photos are so different that it didn't make sense. Returning to the church records, they showed Lillian was confirmed in 1896 and Grace in 1915. I also researched clothing for those time periods and was able to positively identify girl E as Lillian with her dress, high neckline and oversized sleeves, and girl D as Grace, even though the blurry child photo of Grace did not pair with the confirmation photo of her. The large bow in her hair and the flowy dress material all fit the 19 teens. After I utilized this method across my photos, comparing the known to unknown photos, I double-checked my results by building the grid on the right of the blue bar, comparing the unknown photos against each other. And it gave me the opportunity to double-check my results and confirm their identities. The green blocks outlined by these blue rows confirm Lillian's identities, and Matilda's in these highlighted in orange, and Louisa in these boxed in teal. And Grace was identified by process of elimination. Now, let me talk a little bit about family traits. Aside from people who may not have been raised by their genetic families, such as adoptees, you or your clients know your faces, or your clients know their family faces better than anyone else. After all, you've looked at those faces your whole life. You may not be cognizant of it, but if you think about it, you can probably list some family traits that regularly appear in your family, or your clients can too. So when you're looking through those sorted photos, ask your clients, do you see any traits in this face that make sense and makes you think that this person belongs to a certain side of your family? In my family, we've inherited an interesting trait. It's handed down through those Formans. Our eyebrows are very short, especially the one on the right. This trait helped me decide which of my many photos were likely Formans. Facial recognition will also find these traits, and they will show up in your pairings and resemblance numbers. Sometimes Related Faces presents you with pairings that can be pretty conclusive. This is Andre Kearns, and some of you may know him. He asked us to help him determine if an unknown photo he has is an additional photo of his great-grandfather, James Richards. Related Faces returned a very strong resemblance score of 99.82. After some high fives with Andre, we went through a visual confirmation. See how James's eyes form little shaded areas in the corners? This is evident in both photos. Also, notice that the right brow makes a sharp downturn after it passes over his iris. His lips are another clue. The bow, excuse me, of his upper lip is small, but very peaked, and there's a little pucker between the peaks. This is very evident in both photos, excuse me, and is visible even through the mustache in the photo on the left. These are the kinds of things you're going to want to look for when you're analyzing your faces in your photos. Now that we've talked about digitization, facial recognition, and family traits, and the use of those resemblance numbers, I want to step you through a series of cases we either solved or we found possible new family members not previously recognized. My great-grandfather, John Swankar, or Gramps, and his son Martin looked a lot alike, and I built this chart to help me with a few photos. The photos boxed in teal were unmarked, and I needed confirmation of their identities. As you can see, the resemblance numbers in blue indicate the photo is Martin, and orange is Gramps. But the family photo is the one I want to talk about. Many times, identities of a single person in a photo can help you identify every other person in the photo simply by association. In photo A, most of the faces are blurry except the father. My family thought it might be a family photo of the Swankars. Here are some pairings Gramps made with this photo. Photo 1 was taken in 1927, the year my grandparents were married. They're sitting next to Gramps with Martin in the back. Gramps is 44. Photo 2 was taken in my childhood home in 1968. I was 2.5. Gramps was 85. Positively identifying Gramps in this old family photo means, by association, I can identify the other members of the photo. The birth order of the children was further confirmation of the identities because they fit my family. Martin, then Anna, then Grandma Elizabeth. Grandma was born in 1910, so I date the photo around 1913. That means we were able to make a pairing when there was about 55-year difference between photo A and number 2. A pairing with this large of age gap doesn't always happen. There's usually a sliding age gap with facial recognition of about 25 to 30 years in adults when we make the best pairings. So these pairings have also shown me that Gramps tips his head slightly to the right when he has his photo taken. And now I can use that habit that he has in order to help me identify him in other photos. Family photos can help you identify unmarked wedding photos. None of these wedding photos were labeled. The one in the upper left did have written Emmy ? Written on the back, but I wouldn't call that a real identification. This one family photo taken around 1912 helped me identify 4 of my unknown brides in my wedding photos: Kate, Ida, Laura, and Alvina, which is great. But figuring out who the brides are gave me so much more. Once the brides were revealed, then I knew what their husbands looked like, and I could add their images to my family tree. In the case of Ida and Alvina, their photos included their wedding parties, and the church records told me the names of the attendants. Related Faces helped me identify in Ida's photo, Louisa Foreman, and in Alvina's, it identified George, Theodore, and Emma. And I used other photos of Arthur and Ted to help me identify them in Ida's wedding photo. That means by process of elimination, the last person in Ida's must be Gertrude Robbins, and in Alvina's must be Eleanor Sonicson. I've been able to identify a large number of unknown people by the fact that I could associate them with another person in a photo where Related Faces was able to make a positive identification. Now, obviously, facial recognition works best when there is more than one photo of a person, but can it be done by association? If you look at and see what fits, it's very possible. This example is the first photo mystery we solved when we were developing Related Faces. The photo boxed in teal was an unidentified photo my cousin owns. We wondered if it could be a photo of our 2x great-grandparents and their first kids. Our 2x great-grandmother, Eleanor, died, giving birth to her 5th child, and our grandfather, Henry Sr., ended up marrying her sister. The orange photo is the one of Henry's family with Eleanor's sister, Angelina, and 12 of the 13 surviving children from both wives. Our test paired the 2 men in these photos with a similarity of 98%. So a positive identification of Henry gives us the basis for our identification by association. But could we prove the woman in the blue oval was Eleanor? Here are some things we analyzed and things I suggest you look for when making a determination. We investigated the paper, the clothing, and the curly banged women's hairstyle to see if they fit the time period when our people lived. Each of these fit nicely for the photos between 1865 and 1880. Our first children were born between 1870 and 1876. We also looked at the birth order of the children by gender. In the photo, the order is 2 girls, then a boy. In our family, the firstborn was Anna, then Kate, and then William, which fit nicely. Our mother also made a surprising number of familial pairings. She paired with 3 of Eleanor's children, Anna, Catherine, and my great-grandfather, Henry Jr. But the thing that really sealed our belief, this is the only known photo of Eleanor, is that she makes pairings with 3 of the daughters of her sister and her husband, Ida, Emma, and Laura. To top things off, we had an added provenance, that the photo was owned by a descendant of Anna, the oldest child. It makes sense that the oldest child would inherit the photo of her mother. We have also no doubt now that this is a photo of Henry, Eleanor, Anna, Kate, and Bill. During that same time when I was working on the bride and groom photos, I loaded the photo of the girl in the confirmation apparel, which had nothing written on the back. That same family photo helped me identify the young girl and helped me understand why Kate's wedding photo says Emmy on the back. On the left, you can see the pairing showed me that the confirmation girl is actually Emmy. But the bottom photo, Related Faces, showed me that the 2 sisters really do look quite alike. Here's another misidentification of Kate. On the left is a photo of Kate owned by my cousin, and you can see it's labeled on the back. What I'd like you to notice is her clothing. In the middle is my unlabeled photo, and it's very easy to pick out Kate in the photo. She's wearing exactly the same outfit. Now, my cousin said that Kate loved hats, and that's probably explains how the photo on the right got labeled Kate Schlobaum ? The paper style is period correct, but the woman appears to be younger than Kate would be at the turn of the century. And I was right to question, it isn't Kate. The photo is this photo only has made 1 pairing, and it identifies her as Judith Swankar Zavadny, which is my grandpa's sister. The takeaway here is to double check your photos because they may be labeled incorrectly. Sometimes you may load a photo and you're hoping that you'll get a pairing with a particular person, but no pairing is returned. And this may lead you to wonder why not. I was hoping that one of these photos in the center might prove to be, excuse me. There we go. I don't know why it won't stay on that slide. There we go. Okay. All right. So after some closer examination, it became evident that they're not Eleonora. The clothing style of the lady with the hat is clearly Edwardian, which came after Laura passed, and the eyebrows for neither of the ladies has the same shape as Eleonora. There are a number of things that can affect the results, to include blurry or small images as discussed before. But here's a couple of things you might not have thought of. Photos that were hand colorized can be challenging because no matter how good the artist is, it's unlikely they were able to perfectly trace the features of your person. Also, some artists took license to correct facial features such as a drooping eyelid or scars. Photo restoration is a fantastic thing, but here too, the restored images may not be exactly as your person's facial features. So if you're thinking back to the slides on the facial recognition, you can see that we really need to have the exact same measurements or pretty darn close to get those pairings that we're looking for. Okay. There we go. Now, at Related Faces, we had the opportunity to work with the Library of Congress and import into our collection their photos that were suitable for facial recognition. We automatically pair with your people, those people from the Library of Congress, with a resemblance score of 75 or greater. When you find an interesting pairing, just click on the URL link and we will take you to that photos page at the Library of Congress where you can do further research. I'm personally researching this photo as 3 of my foreman women have made pairings with it, and it's a side of my family where I have a brick wall. Since beginning Related Faces, I have to say I'm surprised at how many times one identification cascades into so many more people being identified. This is what happened to my friend Steve. He actually just wanted to see what Related Faces does, so we decided to use his own inherited photos as examples. By the time we were finished, he ended up getting a pile of genealogical leads that he needs to research. These 3 photos were where we started. The confirmation photo originally only had 2 people identified, Steve's grandparents, Edna and Ray, and they're under the arrow. Below is a photo of Edna and her 5 sisters, and to the right is a wedding photo for a 2 times great aunt and uncle. The first thing Steve wanted to see was if it really is his grandparents in the confirmation photo, and Related Faces confirmed Edna by pairing her with every known photo of Edna. After he saw how well it worked, he sent me more photos, and Steve ended up getting a bit more than he bargained for. He thought only his grandparents were in the confirmation class photo, but we found a lot more. Please look at the pairing boxed in pink. It looks like Edna's sister Rose was probably in the same class. Look how her right eye shows a lot of white between the lower lid and the iris. And the lower lid for both girls in the pairing show this. It's quite evident. The resemblance score isn't very high, but we're comparing a child photo to an adult photo, and her eyes really do tell the tale. Then we found what looks like a familial pairing with 3 photos from an album page labeled Edna's Mom's Brothers and Sisters. The confirmation class photo paper and the clothing styles indicate it's at least 1 generation after the 3 photos from the album page on the left. The paired box in blue is pointing to Edna's uncle as having a descendant in the class, maybe a son or a grandson. And it looks like the twin aunts do as well, as shown by the paired boxes in teal and orange. The teal pairing shows how much Rose looks like her great aunts. On the right is a photo of Steve's grandfather, Ray, and his 7 brothers. We found Ray's younger brother was also in that confirmation class. Steve's grandmother, Edna, had an aunt named Hema. This photo is labeled as being Hema and August Olander's wedding photo. We believe this young woman in the confirmation photo could be Hema's daughter. She too would be related to the twins and the gentleman on the prior page, album page. Lastly, Steve sent me a photo boxed in green. He said that the only person identified in the photo is the woman boxed in teal, Emma Olander. With comparisons to the Olander wedding photo, Related Faces revealed more people to Steve. The young bridesmaid boxed in blue appears to be August Olander's sister. We have two candidates for August Olander in the family photo. They're boxed in orange. We believe the man on the left with a resemblance number of 96.21 is him because the other brother has a cleft in his chin where August does not appear to have one. And then the pairing boxed in gray would indicate that the man in the family photo is probably their father. So Steve ended up with a lot more than he expected. Do you have photos that hold identities that are just waiting to be revealed? I've shown you how you can identify people in older photos by associating them with other known photos in your family tree or your photo tree, excuse me. But of course, the easiest way to make identifications is to have a known photo of your person. So I encourage you to think broadly about where you might find other photos of your family. I found my family photos on book covers, in school photos, in local libraries, and there's even a separate section on the Portage Community Historical Society website dedicated to 3 of my families. My family, both at home and abroad, have also supplied me identifying photos. Some of them were with relatives in Sweden. A lesser known place to find photos is on gravestones. The Carlentini, Omaha, and Beyond genealogy group paid a photographer to photograph every headstone in the Carlentini, Sicily cemetery. They have asked me to load these photos into Related Faces and will begin this project later this year. Of course, please be mindful of copyright protections on photos you may want to use, and be sure you have all the proper permissions to utilize any photos. So I created Related Faces because I needed to figure out which people in my photos were great Grandma Mathilde and her sisters, plus a whole lot more unknown family members. And I hope this information from this class helps you solve your photo mysteries. And so I want to thank you again for spending time with me and inviting me to do this presentation for you. And I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you.
I have questions.
Yes, go ahead.
So I watched your previous video that's recorded that's on YouTube, and I'm just wondering, like, how much does this website cost?
Oh, sure. Sure. So we have two.
The beginning just to sign up and put everything in.
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, with a subscription, you get the first 14 days free. I just want to put that out there. And we did it on purpose. We know there's some people that have a handful of photos, and we understand that. So your first 14 days with either the 6-month subscription or the 1-year subscription is free, and we don't bill you until that 14th day. So if you decide, hey, I'm done, you can cancel, and that's it, and you don't get billed. Our 6-month subscription is $64.99, and our 1 year is $99. And they are set to auto renew. If you don't like to auto renew, that's fine. Anywhere within that subscription period, you can go into our settings and you can hit cancel, and it will still give you the rest of your subscription. It just stops the auto renew.
Thank you.
Certainly.
We have a question from Bonnie in our chat for you. Okay.
Oh, sure. Where's she?
Asks, when taking a pic with your phone, do you use the highest resolution? Her phone supports 1 times, 2 times, and 3 times. They're saved on the phone as JPEGs. And what about TIFFs? But I think that, Tina, we're probably going to have to ask you a little bit more, because the 1 time, 2 time, 3 time is not necessarily resolution, right?
Right. So when it's part of the digital. So like on a lot of the cameras, if you go in there, you can adjust the zoom to half, or 1 times, 2 times, 3 times, and that's the zoom feature. But some phones allow you to save at different levels, like certain meg, and it'll usually appear as like 46K, 1.2 meg. I always save my photos on my computer at the highest resolution. Sometimes if I want to do something else, you can resave them and save them at a smaller amount, like if you need to email them to somebody or something, but I always save mine. Our site allows you to load a photo up to 10 meg. Now I'm saying that with a caveat, because if your internet isn't very high, a 10 meg photo is not going to load, and only people with a really high rate of speed on their internet are going to be able to load something that high. I normally have my photos usually a minimum of 1 meg and somewhere around 3 meg. And those usually load very well, and they usually have very good quality.
There's usually a setting inside your phone, and I'm on Apple, so I have Apple stuff, Mac, all that. But you're going to have to go into the settings of your phone, and then you're going to have to go into the camera on the settings of that phone. And I was just looking to see if I could find mine quickly to show somebody, but inside the camera setting inside your phone to be able to change whether it saves it as high res, low res, or what. The other thing on iPhones, we have the added issue that Apple has changed it from being a JPEG to an HEIC. So if you're wanting to be able to share those to people and upload them to different things, you'll need to make sure that you change it to JPEG or whatever Tina's going to tell us.
Yeah, this is your little friend when you have an Apple. So what you can do with your Apple is you plug this in and into your computer. This end is the part that goes into your iPhone, and it makes your iPhone a drive. So what you're going to do is you plug it in, and then you go to the Explorer. Now I'm going to give you what you do on a Windows machine, okay? And then maybe you can tell them what to do on a Mac, but you just plug it in, and it will basically show up in the file folder search, the little yellow thing that allows you to search for your programs and your files. And it will show up as say Apple iPhone, and you click on that, and then there'll be another item that you click on, which the name of it is escaping me right now, and then it goes to something called DMC, and you click on that, and then you'll see all these folders by month and year that have your pictures in them. And she'll go to the very last one, because I'm assuming you just took your photos. You click open that, and then you can literally drag and drop them like a normal drive off of your phone, and your computer will convert them automatically into JPEGs. Okay. If you email them out of your phone, which you could also do to yourself, it will ask you what you want to do with it, and you can save it at a different. So let's say that you took a picture and it was 3 meg, but you only want it to be 1 meg or whatever. It gives you like 4 selections onto the size that you want to email as it comes out of your phone. So do you have more to add there, Angie?
A little bit. It's important when she's saying meg and I'm saying meg, it's actually the letters MG.
MG, yeah.
So KB means kilobyte, and there are, I think, 1,000 kilobytes in a megabyte, and then there's something like 1,000 megabytes in a byte, and gigabytes are GB. So that's to explain some of the techno lingo that you run into. What I want to show you is she was showing you this kind. Oops, I do this. I put that little thing. This is the kind of a thing for a computer that has the this kind of an option to go into. But if you don't have this, you can have this. This is a little part that your little what do you call it?
It's a USB port, and are you switching it to a C?
Yep. Yeah. Your USB goes into your USB, and then this can go into, as you see, these brand new features that they've put on to Apple's are these little tiny, almost they're calling it a C because it's a little tiny thing, but this is a UBC, right? So you can get these at pretty much any electronics store for, I think I got mine for maybe $10 or something. You can get them on any of the online stores as well. But that's how you can fit it into an Apple or a Mac that doesn't have the same features as a lot of the PCs that maybe have these. I don't know if they're still doing that or not, Tina, on PCs.
Yeah, they have them. The last one that I bought, it was kind of hard to find one, but I searched around because I still wanted one with a USB, because I have other things that an external mouse and other things. So I wanted that, but the C is now becoming the standard, and the iPhones, at least the last iPhone I bought, actually came with the little converter for me, but I don't know if they're doing that with the new ones. Okay, what? I have family photos that I believe is one family, but I only have one photo of one person I can identify. Will there be a person? Okay, so what you would want to do is, I would say, try the 14-day, or if you have, Angie, can you put this person in touch with me? And if you only have one, I have what's called a test environment, and I sometimes help people with those when they just have one or two. So Paula, if you get with Angie, and she'll connect you with me.
But
And
Paula
look at
can use the customer service at Related Faces.
Yes, use customer service at relatedfaces.com. That would be fine.
I'm not going to step in the middle of you then.
Okay, that's perfectly fine.
That's a lot easier way to do it.
Yeah, it is. So, but
Okay.
yeah, it is possible. I mean, you saw the one with my grandfather, and there's been some of them that I was really surprised how we were able to discern. In fact, there was a photo, and I don't have it with me, but I just recently did some with my cousin, with Alvina in particular, where we were able to identify, well, her wedding photo, nobody was identified. We only had one photo of Alvina identified, and we were able to find her. And then I had some with my grandfather when he was a child, which I will warn you right off the bat, children make pairings with everybody, especially other children, because, and we had to research this, and it's because when the human child is born, they all really do have similar measurements. Babies are all approximately the same size. Their heads are almost the same size. Their eyes, most of them are born with that bluish tint to them. So babies really do look like, it's kind of like that thought of, hey, a child can become anything they want. Well, they grow into being different things, but they look a lot alike when they're little. So it's not until they're about 8 to 14 years old that they start taking on their adult features. And so you're going to find that children just, they're difficult. So they will pair with themselves, but you have to really look at them closely because they will pair with a lot of other kids too.
I'm going to ask you one other question while we wait for any students have any further questions. We're going to take about 1 more minute here, 2 more at the most, and then we'll go off of we'll close out our event. But one of the things that you brought to mind for me with taking photos with your cell phone was that a lot of us maybe have on our cell phone the not just the camera, but the light for the flash is on or automatic. Will that light or flash damage the photo?
So those, no, because they're like instant. But what happens with those document scanners is, you know how that light goes slowly across like this. And what happened was I put those photos on there, and then it was like laying it on the sun almost. I took that photo and laid it right on that glass, and that light was right there, and it just went like that. So we're not talking about if you've got those little photo scanners. Those are made to scan your photos. Now, your thick cardboard photos, which these are going to be on the cardboard, are not going to go through those small photos. You have to do it a different way. Now, and then they've got those cool new, what they're called, scan snaps or whatever, that scan those, the light is way up here. And so you don't have it right on. The problem is when you lay it on that document scanner, 1, you're exposing it to the light, and 2, it's 600 DPI. So your results that you're going to get are going to be pretty lousy. They're for facial recognition, right? If you want to do it, that's up to you. But I really want you to learn from the mistake that I made. I have about a dozen photos that I ruined, and I have to keep them wrapped up in the dark. I keep them literally in a fire safe zipper bag, all of them, that is completely black on the inside, just to try to save the photos themselves. Now, I have digitized copies of them now, but I ruined them. I did it, you know, I didn't do my research ahead of time. So I want you to learn from what I did.
Where would you get hold of the zipper photo babe?
My daughter bought it for me actually for a gift, and she found it on Amazon. It's
Okay.
a fire safe. It's listed as a fire safe document bag, but that's what I put mine in because it's super dark. It has a zipper, it has a flap that goes over the zipper, so light cannot get in there. But now I have them wrapped, you know, what is it? Archival has the papers and everything. So if you want to get the acid free and everything, papers, if you want to store them that way, that's really, really good. They're a great company. Not that I'm necessarily endorsing, but that's a good place you can source that information.
That's
So
super.
that product. Yeah.
Well, thank you. There's one more question. Do you recommend using a photo scanning app for your phone?
Okay, so that's a great question. So, you know, I met Angie at a conference, and we are there with PhotoMine, and they have an app. And I know that MyHeritage now has a new one it's basically kind of the same thing that uses your cell phone camera, and you do it, and then their software scans. Now, what I would like to point out, I think they do a great job. They say you can do more than one photo at a time. You can do like up to 4 photos, I think, at a time. But I want you to keep in mind that if you do 4 photos at a time, so let me just like grab a piece of paper. Okay, here's a piece of paper. And you put 4 photos on there and you do the whole thing as one, it essentially makes that one photo, right? Now they can discern, here's a separate one. But think about how tiny your heads are going to be, where if you do them individually like this, you can zoom in right on her face, and look how much better her face would be than if you had her head as one photo on this paper. So I think their products are great. My suggestion is, if you're going to use it, do it one at a time.
Brilliant, brilliant advice. Well, thank you everyone for being with us today. We're going to go ahead and end our event, but if you want to stay on for a few minutes afterwards, that's your benefit as a student of the International Institute of Genealogical Studies. Thank you, Tina LaFreniere of Related Faces. I'm Angie Breitenbach, the Executive Director of the International Institute of Genealogical Studies, found at genealogicalstudies.com, where we help you become a professional genealogist.